Welcome to the Berman Golf Podcast, where we're helping golfers over the age of 60 increase distance off the tee so that they can hit shorter irons into the green. Yeah, baby. You can visit us at bermangolf.com for more information and get ready. This is going to be a fun one. And we're rolling, baby. The Long Balls Golf Podcast. I got another guest on the show today. We got Phil Pellerito.
That's it. First try. Got it, man. Thank you.
You're over there cracking up. You weren't ready for that introduction.
I wasn't ready for that, but you pulled it off great. Execution. That's fun. That's awesome.
Phil is the general manager of Shadowwood Golf Course.
Yep, the Preserve facility.
The Preserve facility in Bonita, Florida.
Yes.
Bonita Springs, Florida.
Yep.
And I met Phil through our mutual friend, Daniel Udd, who was on the podcast last episode or the episode before. Yeah, I think last episode.
Yeah, it's hard to follow Udd up. He's obviously setting the pace here. So we'll see what happens.
He set the bar real high. And I wanted to have Phil on the podcast today because Phil is getting really into the mental side of not only golf, but also life.
Absolutely, 100%. It's like a side passion. It's kind of crazy now. It's overtaking my life.
So before we get into all that, let's do a real quick history about who you are. How'd you get into golf? Just let people know who you are and your credentials, essentially.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you. Thanks for the introduction, and thank you for executing that the way you started it. So I would tell you that I got into the golf industry, kind of an interesting story. I wasn't the best child in middle school, and I actually got suspended from school and kicked off my baseball team. And consequently, I found a golf club. I couldn't get the ball in the air. And as I was kind of practicing and so forth, it made me really frustrated. So I started diving into it, figuring out how I can do that. I'm very competitive in nature. So I'm like, how can I get the ball in the air? This is probably when I was about 12. So I started taking an interest into it, started progressing a little bit, tried out for my high school team when I got there. Totally sucked, did not make it, pissed me off even more. So I kind of went down the path of really just continual improvement. I really enjoyed kind of the ownership that came with my game. I had the person that I had to answer to. There was really no excuse on why I was executing this way, not executing this way. And just kind of developed as I went. At that time, I started working at some golf courses just for kind of free access to facilities, right? Kind of working outside and started progressing in the industry. I went to Barry University, majored in sport management, minored in business. And then once I graduated school, I had an opportunity to come to this area as a golf professional through somebody I worked for at a facility when I was kind of growing up on the East Coast. Took the opportunity to simplify my life at the time. At the time, I was in graduate school. I was working multiple jobs. But I kind of just wanted to continue to play tournament golf and get better. So I took the opportunity, kind of progressed from there. Got my PGA classification, mainly focused in golf operations, and have been in the industry, I'm kind of dating myself here, but for about 14 years now as a professional in the industry. So here we are. So mainly golf operations based. I'm kind of leaning into the executive management side as the general manager of the Preserve facility. It's a little different career path, but super passionate about just the game in general. And like you mentioned, starting to get really into the mental side of it. It's funny. I was just thinking about it today. I gave a couple lessons today, and I kind of feel like I'm becoming a life coach on the practice tee, not necessarily a golf instructor. So they're so interconnected. It's pretty amazing. So look forward to breaking it down.
Yes, we're going to talk about it even more. So
absolutely, we
got to play together last weekend. So a week ago, me, you, Daniel Udd, and Gavin.
Yep.
Your guys' other buddy. We all played around.
We did.
And you guys are good. It's just, I didn't. This is the first podcast I've recorded since that round. It was just fun watching you guys play. I mean, just absolutely amazing where these guys are up there on the tee box calling their shot. I'm going to hit this nice draw. I'm going to hit this little baby fade. I'm going to land it right over there.
Yeah.
And for the most part, they pull it off. And I'm just going, man, that's cool.
Yeah, it's sometimes we pull it off on occasion,
Yeah.
And we certainly let each other know when we don't pull it off. That's for sure.
That was probably the most enjoyable part. Is the good-hearted trash talking that was occurring.
That's it. That's what it's all about, right?
So we got to play, and here's the crazy thing is all three of you guys are essentially scratch golfers. I don't know what your technical handicaps are. However, I consider you guys scratch golfers, the three of you guys, and you guys played a game called 9, I think it was.
9 point.
9 point, and it was just amazing. Absolutely amazing how good you guys were doing. And here's the thing that I want my listeners to get out of this is I was watching you and Gavin mainly because I had already worked with Daniel before that round. I was watching you and Gavin absolutely murder the ball off the tee.
Sure.
And I'm sitting there looking at you going, oh, you're just leaving 20 yards on the table. Yeah. Just leaving it there because of the inefficiencies that were occurring in the grounding. So I don't know that we necessarily want to get into that right now because the reason why I wanted to have you on here, we wanted to do this was the mental side of it.
Sure.
But it kind of leads into that because you didn't have the grounding, the consistency, your consistency started to suffer a little bit, mainly on the back 9, not so much the front 9, but the back 9. The front 9, you're throwing darts, talking trash. You were scoring all the points.
Yeah, it was a good front 9. I enjoyed the front 9 very much.
But on the back 9, it started to get away from you a little bit. And for all my listeners, when I say get away from it, it wasn't 100% perfect what he was trying to do. It was 90% perfect, which is still 300% perfect for me. I'd take it any single day, any day of the week. But what started happening, and you didn't notice it, was you started saying negative thoughts, negative words. You started saying negative things about yourself. Oh, you're a dumbass. You shouldn't be playing this game. These were words coming out of your mouth.
Yeah.
And I'm like,
they were.
Phil, dude, you got to be careful because Bruce Lee, one of Bruce Lee's quotes is, never say negative things about yourself because you'll start to listen. I don't remember the exact words, but that was the message. And you're going, oh man.
Oh yeah.
I didn't even realize I was doing it.
So it's interesting you say that, right? I think one of the things to recognize just as far as negativity goes is that nobody, regardless of how good they are immune to only being positive all the time, right? We're obviously all humans. We're going to say negative things. The hardest part about golf and the mental side is understanding that you potentially will do that and then trying to stop your initial reaction to it. So like you mentioned to me, and I even told you, I think on the next hole after that, I was like, I didn't realize how negative the energy was getting until you pointed that out, and it kind of stopped me in my tracks. But the hardest part about the mental side of it is, are you disciplined enough to stop yourself in the tracks from doing that? Because I can easily go down a path of continued negativity. And like you said, I mean, the inefficiency, like the front 9 and the back 9 was totally different. And the inefficiency is such a dramatic difference that naturally you're all of a sudden going to start questioning your ability. And then the tendency, pretty much, not for everybody, but obviously you have to train yourself to remain positive, is to go down a negative path. Yeah, it's like you said, I mean, the more you talk to yourself that way, the more likely you are to listen to that at some point.
Right.
Which you shouldn't.
Correct.
Yeah, you shouldn't.
How many times have we heard in the golf world, the hardest 6 inches in golf is between the ears?
100%.
The hardest 6 inches in golf is between the ears. Right. And you only make it exponentially harder when you start saying negative thoughts, thinking negative thoughts, harping on, why did I just do that? I can't believe I just chunked it. How did I just hit that into the water? Oh yeah. Dumbass. Why, what, this, that, and the other. And it just makes it worse, makes it harder.
Yeah. And I think the biggest key on that, and like you said, I mean, it definitely makes it worse. It definitely makes it harder. And the key to this is awareness, right? Because, the guys on the PGA Tour, best players in the world, LPGA Tour, they do the same thing, but they don't let that linger. The next hole, they go right back into routine and just start executing the shots again. So I think the key is understanding the awareness of your reaction to those things. And I think once you understand the reaction to those things, then you can kind of stop yourself. And I've had situations like this, even in tournament situations, because tournament situations and even playing for money or club events or whoever, some sort of competitive nature, the pressure is amplified. So the negative talk is even amplified even more. How do you pull yourself out of that scenario when things go off the rails? It's not an ability thing. I mean, there's some efficiencies that you can develop, obviously, and making sure that you're more stable and we certainly analyzed my stability before this podcast got on there, and I can tell that I can see where a lot of things may go sideways, but you can still manage your way through that with the positive self-talk. I'll give you kind of a situation or example. One time I was playing a tournament, and I was in competition of this tournament, and I went on the front nine as the final round. I shot 40 on the front nine, and that's not the greatest front nine to start off when you're competitive in an event. And negative self-talk, you're not hitting good shots, and all of a sudden you had to say to yourself as a turner, like, what are you going to do to pull yourself out of the situation? And one of the awareness things for me that I understood is that when I played really well, I was excited to hit every shot, even if it was good or bad. I lived with the result, and I was excited to execute the next shot. It was just continual progression, continual positivity. So I had to remind myself of that awareness, kind of becoming the key, and then turned it around and shot 32 on the backside and shot level par for that round anyway, and remained competitive in the tournament and placed fairly well. So how, again, the key is understanding who you are, your reaction, how you can pull yourself out of it. And then going from there, because like I said, if you mic up anybody playing professional golf at any point in time, they're all doing the same thing, but they don't let it linger. And I think the hardest part for most players and amateurs is they let it linger, and it ruins their round rather than almost being a point of awareness to challenge yourself to get better at stopping that from really ruining a round. If that makes sense.
It makes perfect sense. And it's so interesting that you said that, because once you said it out loud, it was clear as day to me that the words that came out of your mouth on the front nine when we played together last week, it was all positive. It was all trash talk. I'm going to take everybody's money. Oh man, beers are on you guys tonight.
Yeah.
And it was just nonstop, upbeat, good-hearted positivity coming out of your mouth.
Right.
And then once we made the turn and there was a couple of shots that didn't go exactly the way you wanted to, and then the negative words started coming out, it was like a faucet. It just kept coming and kept coming and kept coming. And it was, you actually gave them a chance to win some money back.
I still won the money, side note to all the listeners here, but I did give them the opportunity, yes.
Yes, you left it on the table.
Yeah. And you think about that chain of events, right? It's really easy to be positive when things are positive. It's really hard to be positive when things are not positive. When it's negative, who do you become when things don't go your way on the golf course, just in general? And again, everyone's human, and we're not perfect, and we're not always going to be positive. But are we letting it affect us is really the key. And it was affecting me, obviously. And even though I tried to pull myself out of it, it still continued to affect me. And I was thinking about it even after we talked about that. I said, man, I'm not usually that negative that way. But again, we're all learning and we're all trying to progress. So even as someone who plays competitive golf and professional golfers that play for a living and make millions of dollars on TV, they do it too. And that's kind of why people go through slumps and stuff. You can say, it's kind of a tangent. You can say like, okay, well, I'm going to change my swing and I'm going to go through a slump. Well, going back to the mental side of it, not necessarily, you're trying to get better in certain scenarios in your game. But if your mental strength kind of it pulled you through and you continue to remain the same way you were when you were executing at a high level, even if you're making changes, you would still be able to pull through and compete. So the slump is more of like a mental slump as well, because really when you start changing things, the mental side gets really tested. So side note, if you start making changes in your swing and you're trying to execute under pressure, you have zero trust in that execution because you don't know the result of being in this position and trying to execute in that process. Most players, generally speaking, love to feel secure and love to have a really good understanding of the result and trying to control that result and so forth. So if you get in a scenario where you don't have confidence in what you're doing, basically because you're building a new aspect in your game, you're never going to execute at a high level. So the point of that is saying slumps and all these things that people go through phases, we're all human and we all kind of get into that negative mindset or lack of trust in what you're doing. It's just inevitable.
This is really interesting because the more and more that I'm listening to you talk, I'm going, this is exactly what's happening with my older golfers.
Sure.
When they get 60, 65, 70, and their bodies are not working the way that they used to work, specifically with the golf swing, they start losing distance. They start losing consistency. Their handicap goes to crap.
Yeah.
They can't play as often as they want to. They can't play in tournaments anymore because they can't play back-to-back days. And that starts to have a negative impact on them mentally.
Sure.
But then that starts the snowball in the wrong direction.
Always.
So you're using it as I don't really want to say excuse. However, once you succumb to that negative thought process, I can't hit the ball as far as I used to. That's it right there.
I mean, I can't tell you how many lessons that we work on trying to gain distance because the lack of acceptance of the fact that they're not 20 years younger. I used to hit my 7-iron 150 and now I hit it 130. Well, of course you do. Well, of course you do. Like there's some things in your swing that might make you, but like my focus when I instruct, generally speaking, on a swing wise is to gain consistent contact. Can't even think about distance unless you're hitting the ball solidly. There's no point in trying to increase swing speed if we can't put the golf club on the golf ball in a manner that's consistent for contact, right? So that's just step number one. You can't do that. But then again, the mental side of it is it's not necessarily about distance. Everyone's chasing distance. So here's another example. When I was younger, I was playing golf and I played against a 60-year-old and I hit it literally 60 yards in front of them all day long. Didn't matter. I mean, I was extremely overpowering this person on the golf course. But guess what? At the end of the round, they shot 70 and I shot 72 and they kicked my ass. How did they do that? It's not about distance. This person accepted their swing for what they are and mastered the areas that they could. You're telling me, okay, I hit it 150 20 years ago. There's zero chance. I don't care what technology you're going to. I mean, there's things that are going to help you with distance, but your body is changing, your swing speed's changing, your muscles are changing, everything is changing. There's no way you can compare to 20 years ago. Unless you're in a gym and you're like Gary Player and you stretch every day and you're strongest guy at 85, right? So people fight the acceptance of just the fact that they've changed. And if you fight the acceptance that you've changed, you're never going to focus on the other areas that are going to reduce your score, such as learning. I mean, playing golf is different than hitting a golf ball. You know, what is your routines on the golf course? How is your course management? All those things. And same thing, if you're always trying to hit it harder and chase distance, you're never going to master how to score. Scoring a short game, putting this, that, wedges. I mean, no matter what, no matter who it is, how far you hit it, you're going to have 50, 60, 70-yard shots. You should spend more time mastering that than actually trying to hit it 20 yards further. But the lack of acceptance of where you are in your life and in your game, like you said, you're easily going to succumb to that because no one wants to accept the fact that they're older and they can't hit it as far as they did. It's just, it goes back to acceptance and awareness.
Yeah.
It's just the way it is.
Yeah. Ego.
Oh,
it's ego.
Man.
The macho ego.
It's 100%. But even ladies do the same thing. You know, they always want to. Ladies are a little different from the lady golfer standpoint because there's a lot of comparison. But everyone's different at the end of the day. Every golfer on the PGA Tour that you're watching is different. Even though they're publicizing 350-yard drives, you got players out there that are hitting it 300. That's 50 yards less that are still winning golf tournaments. You got players hitting it 272. They're still winning golf tournaments. They are accepting who they are and mastering the things that make them better, right? Just because I don't hit a 350, but I hit my wedges closer than you. Okay, well, that levels the playing field. It's the same thing with players that are getting older, not hitting as far as, and they're buying drivers and this and that. You can do that all day long. Until you accept the fact that you're not going to hit it as far as you used to, you should reshift your focus somewhere else. And most instruction players that I see, you know, we can work on distance and we can be technical all we want. We can gain power from biomechanics and stability and efficiencies and everything you want to, and you'll gain distance. But at the end of the day, you are still changing. You got to accept the fact of where you are. It's a really big mental thing for hurdles for players. Like I said, ego is a big part of that.
Accept where you're at.
Accept where you're at. And then, because then you can focus on areas that make sense. You know, again, areas like, you know, gaining distance and being efficient in your game and all that stuff. Especially utilizing your muscles. I mean, that's one aspect of it. But again, like I said, accept where you're at. You're still 20 years older than you were before. Think about the difference. 20 years is a long time.
It is a very long time.
It is. It's a long time.
In the past couple of minutes, you've mentioned quite a few times fixating on the results. And we were talking about this earlier before we hit the record button, where so many golfers are fixated on the results and not the process itself.
Right.
For example, you go out on the range and you can see the result of the ball that you just hit. And that either leaves a positive impact or a negative impact. The result. It's either going to be positive or negative, and that's your choice.
It is
it's
your
choice.
It's a great way to say that. It is your choice.
To say if that's positive or negative. And this is the part that so few people understand is, okay, you just shanked one, and you're going to say that's a negative impact. I'm going to say that's negative.
Sure.
Versus what you should be saying is, man, I really loaded up great on my backswing that time. I just wasn't able to get my hips out of the way, so I shanked it.
It's a great point.
I loaded really good, though. That was great. Let's do it again, and let's just try it again. Because at the end of the day,
it's a great way to think about it.
We're talking about milliseconds. The difference of a good shot and a horrible shot is milliseconds. The face was open, the face was closed. You didn't turn, you shifted, and you slid instead of turning. All of this is happening in milliseconds. Sure. And then you focus on the result of that versus saying, well, I did do something really good.
Right. But, everyone is working to control the result. Right. And that's really, at the end of the day, most people try to control the result. And, same thing from that perspective is I hear a lot of people will say the same thing like, oh, I'm really good on the practice facility and I'm terrible on the golf course. Right. Well, it's because there's no pressure on the practice facility. There's pressure of results on the golf course. And the other part of this whole thing, too, is everyone's fixated on. So we'll break it down. Okay. The PGA Tour players, the ones that play consistently every single time, they're very disciplined in their approach. And their approach is the same every single time. And no one pays attention to this on TV. But if you watch, it doesn't matter who it is, Tiger, everything. Their pre-shot routine, the way they approach the golf shot, their practice swings, every single thing has a purpose and are very disciplined in that because really they're approaching it that way. They give themselves the best chance to execute the shot. They understand it's not going to be perfect every single time. And every player should understand that we're just making progress towards a goal. We're not all of a sudden going to achieve this goal just because I'm making these swings. And like you said, it's milliseconds. You shanked it. It's a really good way to think about it. Everyone's fixated on the result. But actually, it's a process of getting better is kind of really the byproduct of a millisecond problem that created that result. So if you stay disciplined in your process of like, okay, if I set up this way and I load this way and I get my hips through it this way, I've got a really high probability of not getting this result. I got a high probability of putting myself in a position to get a positive result. And again, positive, negative is all your choice. Everyone forgets that. It's out the window, especially when I get a negative result. It's just out the window. And then that sets the tone for your round. How are you going to approach anything, especially from a golf perspective, when all of a sudden you're negative after you hit that shot, you go to the putting green just to try to shake it off. You're still thinking about it. You get to the first tee, you're still thinking about how are you going to start the round in a positive way? You're never going to. And that kind of leads me to the point of control. So here's where most players fall in the aspect of not only their swing, but their mental side. You have a couple key swing thoughts that you're thinking about and you shank it. Well, every single swing thought that you're thinking about, that you're working on, is now out the window because you're going to compensate for the fact that you just shanked it. So now everything that you're working on to make progress and putting yourself in the best position to get a good result is now a compensation, taking 3 steps backwards just so you don't do that anymore. So now all of a sudden we're fighting a lack of trust in what you're doing to now you're focusing on compensations to make sure you don't get that result. And your mindset, see how terrible of like a spiral that becomes? And then I would say that more than that, I would say 80% of my lessons right now, seriously, are about releasing tension, letting go of the process of trying to control the result, and swinging freely. So let's just say, we're working together and I tell you like, hey, you need to take a longer backswing for extra distance, just hypothetical. You shank it. Guess what you're going to do on the next swing? You're going to shorten it halfway there. And you're going to grip it tighter because you don't want that to happen. Because we're fixated on controlling the results. Golf's different that way. We can't grip it tighter, add tension, and expect a good result all the time. It's only going to minimize the opportunity to get a good result. But everyone kind of has this insane ability or desire to control the golf ball. But all you can really do is control your thought process, kind of the disciplined approach that you're approaching the golf ball with, and really just live with the results from there.
I love it. And I cannot tell you how many times I'm working with one of my clients in here. We're recording this in my hitting bay here in the office right now, where I will watch this guy do beautiful practice swings, absolutely beautiful full back swings, perfect tempos, great swing throughs. And then as soon as I put that little white ball in front of him, the tempo increases by double, shortens the backswing, and rushes the downswing. And it's like, what the hell was that? Like, that's not even close to the same swing.
Not even close.
And here's the most interesting part is they never believe me when I say it.
No?
So I have to record them. I video record them.
Sure.
And I show them a video of their practice swing and then a video of their real swing, and it makes them sick, almost physically ill.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
Absolutely. 100%.
I can't believe that I'm doing that.
And it's again, a desire to control and a fear of not getting their desired result.
That's what it is.
100%. Because if you gauge, we should invent this. I'm just going to say this right now. If we invented like pressure gloves to gauge the pressure in their hands, you think about it, they're going to start off with, let's just say a 5 out of 10. On the downswing, they're a 9 out of 10. And I'm like, how are you giving yourself the best opportunity to hit a good shot when we're a 9 out of 10 on a tension scale? It's impossible. But again, it comes back to, okay, there's some swing thought philosophies that might be affecting that. But it all comes back to the mental side of it. So I gave myself a test one time a couple years ago. I said, I'm going to play for a month swinging at 50% speed with no tension, 50%, right? I'm not going to grip it hard to swing at 50%. I not only hit it further, but I was way more balanced and swung way freer, hit it higher, better compression, you name it, across the board. And I started thinking about that. I'm like, well, what is the reason for that? Well, I have limited tension. My hands are working effectively. I'm approaching it in a very balanced way. My tempo is better. Everything's better. My balance is good. So think about the difference on that. I mean, even though we can swing as hard as we want and generally potentially make it work, think about how strikingly different that was for me to be like, I'm just going to stick to this process and see what happens. I played some of the best golf I've ever played because I have no tension. But that's really just because I was focused on one disciplined approach to give myself a good opportunity to execute the shot with really no desire to control the outcome. Everyone tries to control the outcome. Everyone tries to, it's human nature. I mean, right? We try to control the outcome in everything. And, letting go of the result, but sticking to the process. Because really what it comes down to is if you approach your 50 golf shots on the range with the same approach you're going to have on the golf course, it's one step closer to the golfer you want to become. Now, if you have a result and you shank it and you revert back to old tendencies to try to control it, you're moving so far away from the golfer that you could be just by the desire to control the outcome and the fear of doing it again. I don't want to do that again. Well, you won't do it again if you stay disciplined to your approach. It's really, at the end of the day, that's all it is.
I love that. Mm-hmm. Absolutely love it.
Yeah.
And that was one of the hardest things for me because I don't know if I told you or not. We definitely talked about it on the last podcast when Daniel was on, but Daniel is who essentially got me really interested at becoming a better golfer.
Sure.
And he set me up with a pro in town, Dan Beveridge, and he was taking me out to the range and giving me lessons. And there were so many times where he would ask me to do something and I would execute what he was asking me to do because I'll humbly say that I was athletic enough to just do what he was asking me to do.
Sure.
But the result was horrendous.
Oh, yeah.
Shanking balls, absolutely shanking them, trying to hit them out in traffic. And I'm going, like, this is horrible. And he's back there going, that's better. I'm going, what do you mean that's better? That's worse. Look, did you see the ball? Do you need glasses? That was horrible. That almost went through that windshield over there.
Yeah.
And he's going, but it was better mechanics.
Absolutely.
The fundamentals were better. You've got to trust the process. Remove yourself from the result. Mm-hmm. Trust the process. Do it over and over again. And again, we're talking about milliseconds.
We are.
It will start to work. Just got to trust the process.
I'm smiling right now because all the students that we teach to get better, this is something that we always have to work through. The results, it's always a little bit worse. So your swing is built on security. You know that if I do this and this and this and this and this, I get this result. So if we introduce one thing to that formula of security, all of a sudden the result is now like unknown. Well, it's just totally unknown. And generally speaking, the result is worse. And this is why video is very important because it gives you that reassurance. Because I can say whatever I want to say all day long, right? Yep. And Dan can say whatever he wants to say to you all day long. But the same thing. You're like, did you see that result? Like, I came here to get better, and look what's happening. But that's a normal human aspect. And that's why the disciplined approach comes into place. It's kind of one of those things where this is what you're doing. This is where we're headed. This is how we have to think about it. And this is what we need to do to execute. And the results are going to be mixed early on until that trust in this small little aspect in the security formula becomes implemented and you can believe in what's happening and where we're headed, that's really where the results take place. Because it's going to come down, again, to trusting the process like we talk about, but understanding the process to trust it. And that's part of an instructional side of things, is understanding why we're doing what we're doing. And really and if you can buy into that, see it, understand it, really, develop the feel for what we're looking for, then you can really, implement it into your game and trust that process better. And that's going to come down to just an understanding and awareness of what's happening. The other thing I would say is how you practice makes a dramatic difference. I watch most players go to the range. Now, every practice should have a purpose, right? If you're just going to go to the practice facility and warm up, then great, that's your purpose. No results. No, you're just trying to get loose and warm up. Good. Stick to that. But we still have a knack for trying to, justify results. And with bad results, I'm going to play terrible today. I don't feel great. If you're going to go to the practice facility to work on your game, this is where discipline comes into play, because making practice swings, feeling what you want to accomplish, implementing that, again, not diving into the results, but sticking to the process. And at the same token, I would also say you should practice how you want to play on the golf course. And this is really the mental side, because like we talked about before, everyone says, I'm really good on the practice facility, but I'm not that good on the course. Well, how you're practicing is different than how you're playing. So on the practice facility in the range, you're just ball after ball, no big deal, right? On the course, all of a sudden we make 4 practice swings, we're really tense, we're shorter. Think about the dramatic difference there. So when you play golf on the golf course, you pick a different target every time you hit a shot, right? Generally speaking. But if I'm on the practice facility and I hit 50 shots to one target, I will eventually figure out how to get it there. Because we're all kind of athletes at the end of the day. Your brain will figure out how to make it work, because ideally you want to make it work. But that's a Band-Aid to the solution. The solution is we're practicing to play better, or practicing to be consistent and effective. So until we understand that, and we're disciplined in our approach to improving our game, and we're approaching practice with a very specific thought process. I'm here to warm up today. Doesn't matter about results. I'm just trying to get loose. Good. That's your purpose. I'm here to practice today, work on my game. Well, discipline, thinking about the aspects you're trying to, and again, not worrying about results. The funny part about us saying this is both aspects continue to put the emphasis on don't worry about the results. But we have such a knack to worry about the results. On the golf course, the reason why discipline is so important is because on the golf course, you developed the routine in your disciplined approach to execute in every scenario on the golf course. PGA Tour players, that's what we talked about earlier, their approach is the same no matter where they're at. They can be in California, same approach. They can be in Arizona, same approach. Florida, same approach. Guess what? Their approach allows them to execute in any condition, on any golf course, on any turf, any air quality, whatever you want to throw out there. The wind, it doesn't matter. It's the same exact approach. They're going to be nervous just like you're going to be nervous. But their disciplined approach allows them to execute within that. They're better at being disciplined and trusting the process to give them the best chance of the result that they're looking for, rather than trying to control it. That was kind of a long answer, but I hope that made sense.
It was a long answer. However, you hit the nail on the head when you're talking about the intent of the range, the practice facility. Are you going to warm up, or are you going to work on your game? Mm-hmm. And I learned something from one of my clients who took me out golfing years ago, probably 4 years ago now, out on the East Course, Bonita Bay, the East Course. And we're out there, and the way he said it was, when you're working on your game, you really should hit shots like you would on the course, meaning, okay, the first shot is a driver shot. Mm-hmm. Okay, now your next shot is an iron.
Right.
And then your next shot should be a wedge.
I agree.
And then start over again. Mm-hmm. That's when you're working on your game versus warming up. Okay, I'm going to hit 10, 15 wedges, 10, 15 7 irons, 10, 15 rescues, 10, 15 drivers. Okay, sure. Let's go to the tee box. But when you're working on your game, he goes, never hit back-to-back balls, because you don't do that when you're playing golf. You hit your tee shot, and then it's roughly 2 to 4 minutes later before you hit your next shot. Think about that.
Yeah,
how many
true.
people have the discipline to go work on their game and wait an entire 2 minutes before they hit another ball?
No one. No one.
It's crazy.
So when I talk about practice a lot with students and just ingraining, because you're kind of creating comfort in how you're playing, right? If you really break down, like, I'm good on the practice facility, I'm not good on the course, it's because, the practice facility, we're hitting ball after ball after ball, and we're comfortable in doing that. And on the course, all of a sudden, like you said, we hit one, wait 2 minutes, hit another, wait. It's just a totally different ball game. And I think the biggest thing here is understanding yourself and your game, right? Not every routine. There's no A plus B equals C in warming up and working on your game, right? When I work on my game, I might have my 60 degree in my hand, but the difference is I'll hit it back to back, but I'll pick a different target every time I hit it. And I'll also go through my whole routine because I am practicing how I would approach the golf course. Some players that play, they might play the entire golf course on the range. Like they have a planned attack. I'm going to driver, 5-iron, this, that. And they will play out the whole round of golf on the practice facility too. I've seen players just go out there and just warm up and go straight. I mean, understanding who you are and what's effective for you is probably the hardest part, because there's so many theories out there, but it's really coming back to awareness. Who are you and what works for you? But like you said, practicing to play better. Every shot has a purpose. And if you think about on the golf course, if you really break it down, regardless of what your routine is, regardless of what you're trying to do, every time you hit a shot on the golf course, it's a different target, and you're going through a routine every single time. So no matter who you are and what you do and what your body size is and how hard you hit it, those are the two constants. Different target every time you hit it, and you're going to go through some sort of routine. So if you think about being disciplined and trying to practice to play better on the course, well, you should practice your routine, and you should choose a different target every time you hit a shot. So you can switch clubs if you want. You can keep the same clubs. But those two things always remain the same regardless of who you are. In order for us to play better and not have to control the results every time we hit a shot, we have to build comfortability in that approach. Because knowing that in any situation, you're going to pick a different target and you're going to go through your routine. Tournament situation, money game, I'm playing Pebble Beach and I'm putting all this added pressure. I'm playing $500 and I want to play well. All those things. The best players in the world think about all those things too. All the players in the world, when they play the Masters, you don't think they're freaking out on the first tee? Of course they are. But their routine stays the same, and they can execute in any environment based on their approach, because they built the trust in their approach. The lack of trust in kind of your routine and different targets. This is kind of like the root cause of why we try to control everything. You don't trust the process because you get mixed results or whatever. It's just kind of the way it is. Most students will, I deal a lot with alignment. So if I tell someone that they're aimed 50 yards right of the target, but they've built security in the fact that they pull it 50 yards left and it gets them the result they're looking for, the minute we try to fix that, see you later. There's zero trust in that regard.
Oh,
but that's the thing, right? Most, as an instructor and someone who helps people think better on the course and play better on the course, it's one of those things to where I can say, like, listen, if you hit a 50-yard pull every time you hit a shot and you got the same result every single time, I wouldn't change it, because you're getting the same result and it's repeatable. Every player that comes to an instructor or trying to understand their body better, it's not repeatable.
Exactly.
It's not. It can't be. So we are trying to make it more effective for you so that you can trust that process and alleviate all this pressure to try to control everything, because it's crazy. You can't. Nobody can. Nobody can.
I love that you just said that, because I cannot tell you how many times I've told that to my clients, where I tell them the first thing that you're going to notice is your consistency is going to improve. When we get your body moving better, the first thing that you're going to notice is your consistency is going to get better.
Has to.
It's going to get better.
Yep.
And then you can say, okay, if you can consistently hit a slice every single time, you can be a scratch golfer.
Yep.
Because now you can play the slice. The problem is you don't consistently hit the slice, because you think you're going to play the slice and then you hit the dreaded straight ball. And you can't be a good golfer, or you can't score well when you don't have the consistency. So the first thing that you've got to get is consistency.
Always.
Play the pull, play the 50-yard pull, play the huge slice.
Do it.
But you got to do it every single time, and you can be a scratch golfer.
So perfect example. Again, typically we play a slice. Water's on the left. I set up to play the slice. I pull it in the water. Boom. Fear.
Yep.
Fear sets in. I'm not going to do that again. Then you compensate for it with tension and control, and all these things start to affect your game. Look at Lee Trevino in the past, right? Lee Trevino hit a 50-yard push basically every single time. But guess what? He did it every single time, owned it, mastered it, won majors, see you later. That's the thing. He's consistent with that, and that's just the name of the game. How can you be effective and consistent? And that's really the only way to build trust, but also positive thinking and the mindset will allow you to do that. It's how many variables do we deal with on the golf course? 1 million. Do we want to add the variable of trying to control the golf shot and adding tension? I don't think so. I don't think we want to. So think about all these things we're adding to the game. Like whenever we play a nice round of golf, everyone's like, God, it was so easy and so simple. Well, of course. We're not thinking, we're just executing and reacting. Every sport, this is why golf is so hard. Every sport you play generally is a reaction sport for the most part. When we play tennis, the ball's coming at you, you react to it. You can figure it out. You don't have enough time to introduce all these crazy thoughts into the system. Golf's a little different. Like you said, you hit a shot, 2 minutes, you hit another shot. Well, look at what's happening there. There's so many thoughts. There's so much dwelling on negativity. There's so much trying to control. Just be free. It's hard to do that though, because human nature is always doing the same thing that we're talking about. So I think the biggest thing that I see on a mental side, generally speaking, is the desire to control, the fear of hitting a bad shot, and then really a lack of discipline in the approach from practice to playing and just being consistent in how they're approaching it. One day you make practice swings, the next day you don't. I mean, all those things make a difference. Every shot you hit or every routine you have or anything you add into your game, again, either brings you closer to the player that you want to be or further away. So you choose to decide what path you want to take in your development process, because we're all trying to get better. Tiger Woods has changed his swing 5 times as he's played on the PGA Tour. He's the best player of all time, arguably. 83 victories on the PGA Tour. He's changed his swing 5 times. He's gone through this same process. Slumps, lack of trust, this, that, you name it. Everyone does it. But they're all developing a disciplined routine to execute the best way they can under pressure. And that's really all they're trying to do. And that's what the mental side should help you do, is as we continue to be disciplined in our approach, it allows you to execute more often than not. You're still going to hit a bad shot. It's inevitable. I did, right? We just talked about front 9 played really well. Positive, back 9 started hitting bad shots, got negative, it got worse. Think about the power of positivity. It's just the way it should be. But I think it all comes down to, again, it comes down to fear of a bad shot, trying to control a good result. Just let that go.
One of the funniest parts of our day when we went out playing is when Gavin said, golfers always have the best analogies.
Always.
And what is it? An after birdie fuck up, I think is.
Oh, yeah. Abfoo, I think it was. Abfoo. After birdie fuck up. Yeah. Abfoo. Oh, of course.
It's like, what the heck? How did that happen? I just nailed that birdie, get on the tee box and right into the water. It's like, what?
That happens. I mean, it happens to everybody. It happens to everybody. Absolutely.
Oh my gosh. But my question now after this episode is, was that a consequence of fearing the abfoo before it even occurred?
Probably. So we are trying to control the result, right? Always. No matter what you're doing, basically everyone's trying to control the result. It's crazy. It drives me nuts because I see it everywhere, but everyone is. And it's hard. I mean, we're all victims of that. So think about making a birdie and having a good score. Yeah, the next hole, generally speaking, most players are like, I don't want to mess that up. I just had a great hole. I don't want to mess it up. And I used to be that way too. I used to, let's say I would shoot 2 under on the front 9. And then on the back 9, I'd be like, well, I don't want, you go into protection mode. And protection mode is fearing this abfoo after the fact. You're like, well, I typically mess everything up. And now I just had a great stretch of holes. And I don't want, that's where the fear comes into play. One of my good buddies I grew up with in high school, he played on the PGA Tour. And he would shoot 62, crazy numbers in front of me. And I would always ask him, like, how do you all just like nonstop make birdies? It's just crazy. And that's exactly what he said. He goes, when we make birdies, we just put the pedal down and keep them coming. But think about how much trust they have in their game to do that, right? Most players don't trust anything about their game. So I think that's a great question you ask. It's really fearing of messing it up and losing control of your score that you just had a good hole on. And rather than, again, being disciplined in their approach, because these players that are really good, PGA Tour players, whatever, they put the pedal down, but they put a pedal down basically by saying it's just, okay, they might get a little more aggressive and feel good about it, but at the end of the day, they still have the same routine, the same approach, the same thought process, the same execution. And that's how strong their mental side of this is, because they know when they do that, they're going to get the result and put themselves in the best chance for a good score. They don't fear the bad stuff. They don't even think about the bad stuff. I mean, everyone thinks about it at some point, but they don't even think. I mean, they probably don't even know what ABFU is. They probably don't. I mean, but that's the hardest part about golf. Again, we can hit shots all day long. How are you going to approach the golf shot? How are you going to think your way on the golf course? All those things. Are you going to let negativity bring you down? Or are you going to allow positivity to bring you up? Are you going to try to control everything and get a bad result? Because think about how that affects you negatively. I want to control this. I'm going to hit this really good. I'm going to just, and then it goes sideways. Well, what are you going to think after that? That's always the hard part. You can drop 5, 6 shots easily thinking about things differently on the golf course and allowing yourself just to go one swing at a time and try to get as good as you can be. And that's really where the disciplined approach comes from. But letting go of the control is the hardest part. Everyone does it.
I love it.
Yeah, everyone does it.
I think that might be a good thing for us to wrap up on there. Sure. Is because you just said you can easily drop 5 strokes.
Yep.
By just focusing on the next shot.
100%.
So you hit one off the tee that lands OB.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, now I have to hit from over here now.
Exactly right.
Yep. It's not like, oh man, that was such a bad shot. No, it's done with. It's in the past. It's irrelevant now. Now, Here's my next shot. You just hit one over the green. Okay.
Yeah.
Now I got to chip back.
You bring a good point in there, and I'll wrap it up with this too, is I think acceptance is the biggest key of continual improvement. So I accept the fact that I'm 20 years older. I need to gain more stability in my body, which is why I'm here seeing you to understand how I can be more effective that way. I accept the fact that my negativity is affecting me and I'm not accepting the shots and the results that are happening. So I need to change that thought process, right? The best players accept the result, live with it, and continue to execute, and don't stray away from their disciplined approach. So, and I accept my swing is a little flawed, and I want to try to become more effective in my swing so I can play better golf, right? Acceptance is a really big part of this. We talked about control and fear and all that stuff, but really acceptance on getting better, acceptance that we're always making progress and we're not perfect, acceptance that it's the learning process. I mean, we're all learning and trying to get better every day. Technology allows it, swing philosophies change, you name it. But at the end of the day, golf is interesting because we can only control ourselves and we control our output to the results that we're putting in there. And if you can stay disciplined to trying to understand that better and accept who you are, what your limitations are, how you can become better, I think you'll ultimately loosen the pressure of trying to be perfect and controlling the result. And then you're going to all of a sudden have a lot better scores naturally without anything even happening. Yeah.
I love it. I love it. That was a great little summary there. So
for sure.
How can people hear more about you? Because we haven't even talked about this yet. I meant to say this right when we first started. However, Phil has his own podcast and it's all about mental health. Where can they go to hear more from Phil?
Sure. So the podcast is called Time is Undefeated. It's just kind of a philosophy, and we're all losing that battle all the time. It's just inevitable. So timeisundefeated.net is the website. You can listen to Time is Undefeated podcast on Spotify, Google Podcast, Apple Podcast, pretty much anything that's streaming a podcast, we're on there. And a lot of interesting topics just about life in general and some of the struggles we have mentally and how we can, some strategies to overcome it. And again, accepting kind of what we're thinking and moving past it. So thanks for that shout out. I appreciate it.
I love it. Yeah. Very cool. Make sure you check out his podcast. And are we going to be able to get you back on here?
Let's do it. When we do a next episode, let's plan on making that happen.
Yes, that was fun. Ton of fun. Thank you, Phil.
Thanks. Appreciate it.
Keep on keeping on, baby. Thank you very much for tuning in this week. For more information, please go to bermangolf.com. That's B as in boy, ERMAN, bermangolf.com, and check out a ton of stuff that we have there. Or even better, go to our socials, Facebook, Instagram, YouTube. Make sure you subscribe to us on YouTube, like us on Facebook, follow us on Instagram. We're even on TikTok. Check us out everywhere. We've got tons of content going out every week. And please give us a thumbs up. Comment on the videos. Let me know what your questions are. Try to shoot holes in this. I'll do whatever I can to help you out the best that I can. Thank you, guys.